also be recited al-wilaya. So al-walaya is nasr and nusra and support and protection, whilst al-wilaya is the authority and power and sultan. And both give the same meaning. Like Maliki Yawmiddin and Maliki Yawmiddin. Both are recitations, both are correct. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if we take al-walaya, for those who have allied themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is given to them in both good and in challenging situations. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Wallahu waliyul mu'minin. وَمَا لَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ مِن وَلِيٍّ وَلَا نَصِيرٍ إِنَّ وَلِيَّ اللَّهِ. So this is the support and the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those who have allied themselves and have submitted themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Allah, and recognizing that their only aid and their only defender and their only protector and nasir one nusra only comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for He is al-haq and nothing will come but from Him. And no other support can be given in this earth except by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as I mentioned to you, it could also be recited al-wilaya, meaning power and rule for Allah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the supreme. Innahu malikul muluk, the king of kings, and He is not vanquished or stopped, and none other than Him subhanahu wa ta'ala is worshipped. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us many examples of this similar situation, where after He stood and He faced all of the calamity and all of the punishment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us that in various ayat. فَلَمَّا رَأَوْا بَأْسَنَا قَالُوا آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَحْدَهُ وَكَفَرْنَا بِمَا كُنَّا بِهِ مُشْرِكِينَ. So when they saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment, whether on the battlefield, like when Iblis, Shaitan in Badr, when he said to them, he was encouraging them, no, go fight Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, go, you have power, you have. And then when he saw the angels descend to support Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the people in Badr, he said, nakasa ala aqibai. He turned around and ran away. فَلَمَّا رَأُوا بَأْسَنَا. So when they saw our punishment, they cried, now we believe in Allah alone and reject what we had been associating with Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. We also know Fir'aun. حتى إذا أدركه الغرق قال آمنت أنه لا إله إلا الذي آمنت به بنو إسرائيل وأنا من المسلمين. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala respond to him? الآن, now, when you've seen the punishment, وقد عصيت قبل وكنت من المفسدين, and you were corrupt, a dictator, a despot. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues in that ayah, هو خير ثوابا وخير عقبا, meaning the return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the reward that we will get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those who have allied themselves with Allah, those who have submitted to Allah, those who have decided that Allah's orders are more important than their desires and their needs, and therefore they have focused their behaviors in the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered. Not looking, oh, this business deal is good, I'll do this, but this is haram. So they stopped. They decide, no, the rizq is from Allah and I want Allah's pure rizq. I don't want to tarnish my rizq. I don't want to feed my children haram. And therefore their behavior in their business transactions was to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised them, huwa khayrun thawaban wa khayrun uqba, will grant them by His mercy the best of reward and the best of eternal provision in Jannah, inshaAllah. May Allah make us and you all in Jannah in subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshaAllah. The learning from all this advice to us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the story of the boasting and the gloating of the rich person and the people of Quraysh, and the sacrifices that the people of the cave gave, their whole life they gave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the steadfastness of the iman of the poor neighbor, is to comprehend that dunya, this worldly life, is no more than play. This worldly life is nothing but play, nothing but amusement, nothing but luxury. We can boast about this life amongst each other, showing off the latest car, or showing off the latest phone, or showing the latest computer, and these kind of things that people will boast. Or competition in wealth, or I have 10 children, mashallah, or I have X number of houses. This is all dunya. It means nothing apart from how you use it, what you use it for, and you make it in the path and for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The key lesson is don't fall for its lure. Dunya has a way of sucking you in. Career, the next bonus, the next grade in promotion, the next deal, the next transaction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us many advices about this. He says in Surah Al-Hadid, about the rain that falls on the land, and how when it mixes with the seeds and mixes with the earth, it causes plants to grow, and that is to the delight of all of the agriculturists and the farmers. They're very happy with the growth. The farmer will be very happy with the new lamb that he's getting in the spring. But these plants will dry up and will become like chaff and will become like straw. You see them as soon as rain stops. You see them. They flow, and they will be thrown away by the wind. And you will look, and they will be all dry and yellow. Allah yahfadhum inshallah. But later the plants, and in the hereafter, so this will all be destroyed. But in the hereafter, for those who actually followed that and only were lured by that, there will be punishment, or there will be forgiveness and reward for those who recognized it for what it is and understood that life is but a moment in time, that 60, 70 years will disappear like this. I remember sitting with my aunt, and I was 7 years old, and I was unhappy because my elder brothers and cousins were all going out, but they would not let me go out later in the evening, and I was angry. And she said, "Don't worry, you will. By the time you open your eyes again, you will be 18 and you can go." I remember it like now. That was over 50 years ago. 40, I wish. 50 years ago now. This is how time flies. And it disappears in this dunya. What have you given? How many people are in their graves now who wish they could have one moment, just one moment, where they could come back and submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, spend in Allah's way, to give themselves some reward, that they could actually outscale the scales, instead of being people of nar, that they are people of Jannah now. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in ayah 45 in Surah Al-Kahf, if we continue, وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا كَمَاءٍ أَنزَلْنَاهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ فاختلط به نبات الأرض فأصبح هشيما تذروه الرياح وكان الله على كل شيء مقتدرا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلٍ, Ya Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ya Rasulullah, Ya Nabi Allah, give them the example of this worldly life. هذه الحياة الدنيا. That it is limited, that it is weak, that it is needy, Life cannot go on without the water that Allah gives in the rain. Allah cannot continue without the secret that He has given, the ruh that He actually blows into every infant. This life cannot continue without the balance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought. What happens if the moon just, forget about the sun coming 1 millimeter. What happens if the moon goes out of sync? We will all be flooded. The whales will disappear. So this life is characterized by its limitedness, weakness, and neediness. It will expire. For certain it will expire. For certain it will lapse. For certain it will cease to exist. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us. But also if we use our rational mind, if we think, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَلَا يَتَفَكَّرُونَ أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ. If we think and look at how things come and go, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in many surahs reminds the people of Mecca, you travel all the way to Asham and you travel all the way to Al-Yaman. Have you not seen what we have done to the people before you? All along the route, north and south? Have you not witnessed what happened? Have you not witnessed what is occurring? And what we have done to them? Think about rain. Think about the motion of rain. How it comes. How the sun causes the sea and the rivers to evaporate. And therefore you have moisture in the air. Some of it will rise to the sky and become rain, but it may not reach us. It will rain in the sea. But then there is some moisture that the winds will drive all the way to land. As it hits land, the mountains will force it up. And as it goes up, warm water will hit cold air. It will condensate, and then it will become grey clouds that carry water and it will rain. This is the rahmah and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's given us that to think about His creation, to think about what He does, to think about how He has established and created all of this. فَاخْتَلَطَ بِهِ نَبَاتُ الْأَرْضِ. This rain that comes, it mixes with the seeds on earth and it sprouts and flowers and flourishes. And after all that, أصبح هشيما. It becomes dust and chaff and straw and broken up, where تذروه الرياح, that means it is swept, dispersed, right, left by the winds. وكان الله على كل شيء مقتدرا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who creates, who has the power and has the control in both states. Creating the rain, sprouting, and making it into dust. The same way as He gives us life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كنتم أمواتا فأحياكم ثم يميتكم ثم يحييكم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to us, you were dead, we made you alive, and then you die, and then we give you life again to resurrect you back to us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes this reminder also in Surah Yunus. إنما مثل الحياة الدنيا كماء أنزلناه من السماء فاختلط به نبات الأرض. The life of this world is just like rain. We send down from the sky, producing a mixture of plants which humans and animals consume. He says that also in Surah Al-Zumar, and says that also in Surah Al-Hadid. And I'll finish with this last ayah 46. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just to remind us, just to reiterate again, linking it back to the story of the people of the owner of the two gardens. المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك ثوابا وخير أملا. He tells us that wealth and children are but the vanity and the ornaments of this life. In English we say garnish. You know, when you go and they have this beautiful plate in the restaurant and they put a little parsley or a little coriander on the front. This is the garnish to make it look good. This is what these things in life are. Money, children, wealth is the garnish. It is a decor. But the inside is what counts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah has given us many further meanings and warnings of such before. And says, وَالْبَاقِيَاتُ الصَّالِحَاتِ خَيْرٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ ثَوَابًا وَخَيْرٌ أَمَلًا, meaning the everlasting good deeds are far better with your Lord in reward and in hope. And in terms of الباقيات الصالحات, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, they are the shield. And they said, what shield, Ya Rasulullah? From our enemy? No, he says the shield from nar, from hellfire. And he said, what is it? He said, say, Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. And there is also another narration, ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله فإنها يأتين يوم القيامة منجيات ومقدمات وهن الباقيات الصالحات. So remember those as your باقيات الصالحات. وجزاكم الله خير وبارك الله فيكم, and inshallah next Friday inshallah.